Hello and welcome to GuyLogic. My name is Temko and this is Aragami, a stealth/stealth action game which is mostly stealth and very little action, which is a pretty good thing because the game knows exactly what it is. The game is developed by Lince Works, a small team from Spain, and they did this as a project for their graduation, and then they just continued building it over the last couple of years to release it as a full title. So passion and power to them on that. It's a third-person action stealth game, and you control shadows. The premises isn't new or original, but what they have done with it is fairly cool. But before we dive into the actual gameplay, we're gonna take a look at the options menu and talk a little bit about PC performance and all of that. If you are not inclined to join me on that journey, you can press the annotation on screen and skip straight on ahead to the gameplay section. For the rest of us, let's start with some general options. With the subtitle language being English as well as some other languages, the spoken language isn't actually a language. It sounds a little bit like Japanese with some random Japanese words thrown in, but the rest is chimes and gibberish for the most part. So there's no actual language in the game, but the way they've done it is pretty decent simulation to give you the idea that people are talking while using subtitles and text to explain everything that is going on. You can disable or enable blood. I don't really like the way blood looks in the game. It looks very pastel-y and cel-shaded. Now the game is cel-shaded, but that doesn't really convey that well to the blood. You can display enemy HUD or score events or danger HUD or slow motion when spotted, and all of these things to make your own gameplay experience as you deem fit. This is fairly nice. If anything, I would have liked to see more options of this caliber, especially for people that enjoy stealth games. They generally enjoy having a wide range of abilities to disable a UI or disable a variety of different things such as warnings and meters and the like. So, good start, would have liked to see more. Control-wise is my main gripe. The game does not have rebindable keys, and some of the default key bindings are fairly annoying. Especially crouch, which is on the left control key on your keyboard, is a button you'll be using a lot, which means that to move, as well as crouch, as well as use abilities, you'll often have to position your hand in a very awkward angle, which doesn't really feel great and does stress your fingers quite a bit while playing. Rebindable keys would have solved this issue quite easily, as would logical original key bindings. But again, if you have rebindable keys, that solves itself. So it's a bit of a shame they do not have that. They do have some options for mouse and camera sensitivity, as well as vibration, and whether or not the toggle for crouch is a toggle or a single action. I have left it at hold to crouch because I found that the toggle adds a little bit of delay for the animation to play out, which can result in you getting killed in the face. Other than that, we have some options for VSync, FPS, which you can lock or unlock as you deem fit, as you should. The field of view can go up to 90, though it defaults at 45, which for a third-person game would translate to something around 70 for a first-person game. So it's not horrible, but I still prefer a field of view that is slightly wider, especially as I'm quite bad with the game. If you want more of a tighter experience that more simulates the field of view of you in a third person, then I would suggest lowering the field of view a little bit. I would not touch the gamut too much because frankly it is perfect the way it is. And that's something I do miss a little bit out on, because you see things like shadow distance here, and I would crank this up quite a bit. In fact, I would crank this up quite high, even if you have to sacrifice things like blur or moonshafts or depth of field for it to retain your frame rate. Because frankly, the ability to see shadows in a distance in this game is very important. And I'm not even sure why they have an option to reduce shadow distance, because if you're not familiar with the game and shadow distance reduction is something you often do to get a few extra FPS out of your title, then you might actually have a worse experience playing the game than if you had a higher shadow distance to better plan your next move. So that's a bit of a weird one. I would have liked tooltips with these just to explain what the impact might be, but there's no such thing as tooltips here. Though to be fair, most of these things are fairly self-explanatory. And we have some other things like motion blur, which we have disabled, and bloom, which we have disabled. Sadly, only FXAA, and it doesn't tell us what kind, but as far as I can tell, it is times 4 or times 8. I can't really tell the difference between the two, but it's definitely a bit on the higher end. Then lastly, we have master music and effects volume, as well as voiceover and alert music. Now, voiceover isn't a toggle. For volume, it's only on or off based on what you like. As I said, the game doesn't actually have voiceovers, but it has a sort of half gibberish, half audio oral simulation. That does sound pretty nice. I do like it, but obviously your mileage may vary, so you can turn this on or off. I do like what they have done with the master music and effects volume, which does cover most situations. And what they've done is you can lower the decibel count of the volume. It's something we don't normally see in games. You often see a 1 to 10 or a 0 to 100%, and you're sort of left guessing as to what sounds right for you. In this case, you can just basically say, no, I want it 20 decibel lower than my general audio volume that I have on my computer, which is fairly nice if you know anything about audio levels. I do like this, though it is a departure from something that most other games do, so again, it might cause some confusion among other people. So overall, the performance is fairly decent. I have not had any frame drops or issues regarding the game. I did have a couple of crash to desktop issues when I shut down the game, which is annoying but not game breaking based on the fact that you're already quitting the game, so crashing at that point doesn't matter. I've also had some issues with save points and reloading into save points, as it doesn't seem to be always as consistent when exactly they trigger when you die. So that's a bit of a shame. Other than that, that is the options menu. The game has single player and multiplayer modes as well. And let's go ahead and dive into a mission in the single player mode. The multiplayer mode is a co-op mode. You and another player can play together. And I'll show you the multiplayer, which is online as well. So it's not couch co-op, it's online. You can join by inviting players from your Steam friends list, which is fairly good. I do like that. What I am a bit of a shame of is the fact that even though they do have multiplayer functionality in the game regarding multiplayer joining of players, they don't actually have a way of score tracking against other players. There's no actual leaderboards. Now, the game does score every level on a ranking between F and S based on your ability to perform objectives, based on how many hidden secrets you find, based on how often you're detected, and a few other things. But there's no actual way to compare your score to that of others. And that is a bit of a shame. Now, let's go ahead and dive into the story. We're going to go with single player and grab one of the missions we have available. And I'll show you a little bit of the gameplay and talk about that. Now, the game does few things extremely well, and one of the things I do like about the game, but again, on the other hand, kind of dislike about the game, is the way they allow you to replay levels to improve your score. The fact that you can replay levels and learn how to better complete it, get some side objectives, get some skill points extra that are hidden across the levels is fairly cool. What I don't like but do understand is the fact that even if you unlock abilities, say in Chapter 5 or Chapter 6, and you go back to a previous level, such as this one, which is Chapter 1, you still have all those abilities available, which means that if you are completing a level for the first time, you will never be able to go for the high score, as you're probably missing certain abilities that will increase your point count or make it vastly easier to actually get your points you might want. And that is a bit of a shame. But again, the fact that you can replay levels and add some replay value by score attacking or improving your score is fairly good. Now, as I said, the game has these in-game cutscenes with this pseudo language, and I'll let you listen to that for a little bit. Now, as you can tell, the actual language isn't a language at all. But I do like what the developers have done to still simulate the idea of there being a conversation. Something a lot of games miss out on when they can't afford an actual voiceover or voice acting cast is that they leave audio dialogue out completely and only rely on text. While this works for certain titles, it doesn't work for all of them. And a game like this that is very light on the graphical style, that looks actually slightly dated as far as graphics go and has a very flat shaded color, and then uses a very obscure way of communicating through audio and visual signs, and doesn't have a lot of atmospheric or scenic information conveying, does really benefit quite a bit from even having a pseudo language to focus on what the characters are saying while reading along. The player doesn't really get bored listening to a fake talking as much as he would if there's just text scrolling by and you have to click through it. So I do like that developers have done this. It does give some extra life to the characters and does give a little bit of extra focus to the world. Now, outside of the way pseudo language works, the same really goes for all the guards and various interactions you have. Everything uses this pseudo language, which is a fairly well implemented thing. I do really like that. And the game doesn't make a secret of allowing you to do all a variety of these things to improve on trying to figure out where guards are by their chatter around the fireplace or where they walk around in patrols. One thing I am missing a slight bit is the ability to detect guards more efficiently unless you have the special ability unlocked. Now, there's a special ability that allows you to detect guards through walls when you trigger it, but sadly there's no way to go off on audio signals because the guard's footsteps and anything like that isn't really that audible unless they're actively talking to a different guard. and that is a bit of a shame, meaning you have to rely on things like watching around the corner and looking over ledges with using your third-person view to get a good grasp of where everybody is. And that doesn't always work, especially if the draw distance is messing around with you a little bit, or the guard just comes around a corner where you would have heard him had there been audio cues. So that's a bit of a give and take regarding how stealth works here. Now, talking about stealth, you are Aragami, which is this dude that goes from shadow to shadow. And as long as you stay in shadows, you regain your special ability powers. You can see that based on the color of his cloak. There's this nice little bar that fills up when you're in shadows and drains when you use abilities or step into the light. And if you don't have anything left on your cloak, you can't cast any of your special abilities or use any of your skills, meaning that you're basically a sitting target. What is pretty cool is the way that the shadow and light interaction works. What I'm a bit sad about is that the guards don't really use it that well. It's mostly stationary units such as torches or lanterns that allow for this light to be in place. But the guards, excluding a few special guards, don't really add any light by either patrolling or anything of the sort, meaning that unless you are actively not paying enough attention and stalk directly into the light, you will never get caught by surprise by a ray of light, forcing you to either jump away real fast or drain your entire ability bar. And that is, on one end, a blessing if you are very bad at stealth games like myself. On the other hand, a bit of a downside because it does remove a little bit of the complexity of trying to negotiate a level in a stealth game. Now, the vertical movement in the game that this shadow jumping and shadow movement adds is fairly interesting and fairly cool. Because you can jump up and down ledges and you can jump to and from shadows in a variety of locations, the game opens up levels quite well in a sort of open level fashion. It doesn't do so completely though, and this again is a bit of both an advantage and a letdown. On one hand, the game lets you roam around a certain segment of a level completely free. You can jump to shadow, you can go on roofs, you can go underneath roofs. There are certain walkways, sort of like attics you can go through. There are trees you can stand in. There are buildings you can crawl under. There are a variety of locations you can hide behind carts, behind walls, even inside tree houses and the like. All of this is fairly cool. And if there's a spot without a shadow, but not in direct light, you can also cast a shadow on the ground or on a wall and then be able to teleport directly to that, which is all really cool. But the game then, for no particular reason, puts these arbitrary limits on when you can progress to the next segment. For example, it gives you the objective to steal a bird, but it will only let you get to that bird after you have killed 2 special zones and unlocked the next level and gone ahead and lowered the drawbridge and then gone over that bridge. Whereas if you were able to, if the game allowed it, you could have gone up to the bridge on the ledge, jumped over the still closed bridge using shadow jumping abilities, and completed the level in that manner. So while the game does allow some very extensive freedom in the way you complete a level and the way you reach your objective, it still limits you in very specific segments and wants you to complete every segment of a level, sort of afraid to let you go forward and explore on your own and come to the conclusion that the AI is actually fairly weak in the title. And that is actually very true. The AI is fairly weak. It's not abysmally bad like some other games have it, but it is not spectacular or something to write home about. One of the main things you'll notice about the AI, and that's one of the things I feel the game forces you into these more abstract ways of dealing with obstacles, when you can easily avoid trolls, easily avoid detection radiuses, easily avoid peripheral vision, is that the AI doesn't really pay that much attention. If you are directly into the line of sight of the AI, or you use your dash ability to sprint straight in front of him or behind him, he will hear or see you. But even if you kill an ally just outside his peripheral vision, he won't really react because suddenly he can't hear that. And if an ally suddenly disappears right around the corner in the usual patrol, again, the AI won't really react. The same goes for if an AI detects you and you're somehow able to run away without them killing you, they will lose you in about a minute or so and go back to their regular patrols. But again, they won't pay any extra attention or change up their patrol routes or anything of the sort. They'll just resume where they left off, which means that you can quite easily kill a few guards, back off if they detect you, and then go around and wrap up on that manner. The same goes if you jump away using your shadow dashing abilities or different abilities. You can even kill guards after they've detected you, but before they raise an alarm. And while this is fairly cool that you can do this, the issue with this is that oftentimes these guards will have found one of your corpses, and by the time it took them to find that corpse, react to that corpse, pull out a warning horn and warn their allies, a good 10 to 15 seconds would have passed, which is more than ample time, even for me, to kill a guard. And while I do like that from the fact that I'm a very bad stealth action player, that is still something a bit saddening because the game does reduce the difficulty because of that quite a bit. You don't have to be as careful when conducting certain kills, you don't have to be as careful when moving, and you don't have to pay that much attention to any peripheral vision you might have or audio cues you do, short of being over the top and running straight at them. Again, the AI isn't terrible. The patrols it does are fairly well put together, and the pathing of the AI is fairly good. And the way the AI detects where you are, especially in later stages, is fairly well put together. The AI will track you and will coordinate with its allies to sort of corner you if it can. The only simple thing is that if you jump away 2 or 3 times after being detected, the AI will just lose focus on where you might have been, and that is a bit of a shame. The AI also never really looks up. The few situations I've had when an AI looked up were very rare and far in between, and more often than not were more the case of the cone of sight of the AI clipping with the location I was standing on top of, and less about them looking up in the first place. Again, while I do like this from the fact that I'm pretty bad at stealth games and this makes the game more approachable and playable for somebody that isn't really that much into stealth, it does lower the difficulty quite a bit again. And there's no real way to change this to have the AI be more smart or more difficult if you are a player that enjoys more challenge. Now, moving on to combat and everything like that. The game doesn't really have a combat system per se. It has a takedown system where you can kill guards in one hit, and vice versa. A guard finds you, they will probably kill you in one hit. So you have to time out your attacks and do everything like that. Now, there are a fairly number of abilities you can unlock. Things like the ability to kill a guard using a shadow special ability, or the ability to remove a corpse after you've killed a guard, are all things you unlock and can use skill points on to improve your character. There's some other abilities as well that allow you to detect guards through walls, or even lure guards using sound out of their patrol path. All of this works fairly well, and does allow for quite a bit of variety in the way you deal with a level. Sadly, most of these abilities are only unlocked later on in the game, and if, like me, you then go back to a previous level, suddenly the level becomes much easier because you already had to struggle through the level without having any of those abilities, making it quite hard to complete this level in a good manner, instead of just being sloppy left and right. Also, talking about the level design, it's fairly good. It's not perfect, but it is fairly good. And one of the reasons it's fairly good is because developers have, on purpose, restricted how the player can advance. And what I said earlier about forcing you to kill a light switch and then lower a drawbridge and all that stuff like that, while from a free roaming shadow-based perspective on the stealth side, I don't like it. From a level design perspective, it is fairly good. It forces the player to explore certain segments of a level and find a different variety of ways to complete an objective. And instead of having one big objective at the end of a level, it forces the player into finding several different objectives and chaining them together to complete their mission. The game also uses a pretty decent, though sometimes unforgiving, save system. The game does autosave on every time you complete a mini objective. So one of the objectives here in this level is that I have to get to the temple in the center. But once you get to the temple, it autosaves for you. So you don't have to redo the entire segment you've been struggling with time and time again once you complete it. The downside of this, though it does allow you to restart a level, is obvious that if you are messed up and still completed the objective thinking, oh, let me just go ahead and restart it, you might have to restart the entire chapter, not just that segment. So that is a bit of a drawback on that side. Other than that though, I have fairly few complaints about Aragami. The game does pacing quite well, has an interesting set of abilities even if they are not always executed that well in terms of game balance, with certain abilities being flat out more powerful than others, such as spearing corpses being frankly way more powerful than the ability to see guards through walls when you can already just look around the corner with your camera angle. But all abilities do have their uses and all of them do provide either advantages or alternative ways to complete a level, so that is fairly good. In the graphics department, the game looks fairly simple. It doesn't look exactly up to date, what you consider something like Hitman or Thief, but the aesthetic fits, it doesn't really break anything in the title, and it does merge together quite well, especially the interaction between light and dark and different types of color shading everything in the levels. I do really like that quite a bit. What I'm fairly disappointed by is some of the very poor texture work in the game. Some textures, such as some of these tombstones, look fairly nice even up close. And then you have some of these textures, such as rocks, that look as if they came from a game from the early 90s. A damn shame. I would have liked the developer to add maybe a high-res texture pack or something similar, because even on max settings, some of these textures are really, really poor. Even taking into account some of the issues regarding for example, the light and dark shadows and playing on things like that, textures are still aren't that great. Even though some of the special effects they have included, such as shadows and AA, do mask that a little bit on longer distance. But because this is a stealth game, you'll be spending a lot of time staring into a rock while a guard patrols by, and that doesn't look phenomenal. Now, moving on from that, the game again has a very nice pacing to it, and I do enjoy the gradual exploration of both characters, story, and evolution. So that really brings me to the conclusion for Aragami. It is a very decent stealth action game with a very heavy emphasis on stealth. It allows replayability and replay value in combining and complexity of levels. It allows a variety of different abilities and objectives to complete a level. And even though the game is fairly linear in what you can do, it does have some replay value in optimizing a level or trying different ways to complete a level and get different scores for example, not killing any enemies or killing all enemies, or even completing a level without being detected. There's a variety of ways you can gain score points on that. So if you are into stealth games and are willing to give a little indie a chance, Aragami might actually be worth your time and effort for sure. It's not perfect by any means, and definitely in the graphical department could use some serious work. But everything else in its gameplay department, I feel they do quite well without any major flaws or issues, outside of what I said regarding the AI and some of the forced linearity in the level design. So Aragami comes out on Steam on October 4th, and you can check it out right over there. There's a link in the description for exactly that purpose. And if you like this video, press that like button below. And if you didn't like this video, well, there's a dislike button for exactly that purpose. And leave a comment. Tell us what we did great. Tell us what we can do better. We want to hear back from all of you. And if you want to see more content like this on the channel, just press that subscribe button down below and we will deliver. And until then, I wish you a good day, and until next time, right here on GuyLogic.